will burst into bloom and rejoice with joy and singing. They will receive the glory of Lebanon, the splendor of Carmel and Sharon. They will see the Lord's glory, the splendor of our God. Strengthen the weak hands and support the unsteady knees. Say to those who are panicking, be strong, don't fear. Here's your God coming with vengeance, with a divine retribution. God will come to save you. Then the eyes of the blind will be opened, and the ears of the deaf will be cleared. Then the lame will leap like the deer, and the tongue of the speechless will sing. Waters will spring up in the desert, and streams in the wilderness. The burning sand will become a pool, and the thirsty ground fountains of water. The jackal's habitat a pasture. Grass will become weeds and rushes. A highway will be there. It will be called the Holy Way. The unclean won't travel on it, but it will be for those walking on that way. Even fools won't get lost on it. No lion will be there, and no predator will go up on it. None of these will be there. Only the redeemed will walk on it. The Lord's ransomed ones will return and enter Zion with singing, with everlasting joy upon their heads. Happiness and joy will overwhelm them. Grief and groaning will flee away.
And let us pray together. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. Well, our Lent worship series is based on the words of the prophet Amos, who tells us that God doesn't want our joyous worship unless we're also concerned with justice. Let justice roll down like waters and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. When Jesus entered into Jerusalem on a donkey, the people welcomed him and they hailed him as their king. And they had an idea in their heads as to what that was going to look like. They were oppressed. They were looking for a savior to overthrow the Roman authorities. They wanted justice to flow down to them. They expected Jesus to lead a violent uprising. Instead, as we now know, Jesus' entry into Jerusalem was a vision of a coming day when power is displayed not with military might, but through the solidarity of all people in the name of love and justice. God's ways and our ways are not the same. One leads to destruction, the other leads to life. Well, historically, during the Lent period, the church has prepared candidates for baptism or confirmation in those who are baptized as infants. So in this sermon series, we've also been thinking about the baptismal ceremony and different parts of it. Our Bible in the New Testament contains a number of letters or epistles. These are the ones that were finally preserved for us, but we know that these and many others circulated around the early Christian communities as they encouraged one another. Maybe a little bit like today's blogs. Descriptions of early baptisms include directions as they keep vigil on the night of their baptism to sing and to pray, but also to read those epistles, those letters of encouragement. Letters from and about other Christian communities. How can we keep vigil with our neighbours? You're invited to come on Good Friday as we keep that vigil. This is a tough week to preach a message about Jesus being our Saviour, not through violent means, but by absorbing the violence and demonstrating another non-violent way, practicing what he preached and walking the road to the cross. Jesus will die for us, but not kill for us. And out of it all will come love and forgiveness. On Tuesday, Syria experienced a chemical attack. with the loss of many innocent lives, including so many children. And then on Thursday, the United States responded with a military strike, firing 59 missiles at a Syrian airbase. It's hard for us to believe that Jesus' message, that the day is coming, and Isaiah's message, that waters will spring up in the desert and streams in the wilderness. The burning sand will become a pool and the thirsty ground fountains of water. Instead, we're left with fears of an escalating conflict. When Jesus went to the cross, the disciples were left with their grief and anger and disappointment. What a mess. Sometimes we have to sit in the mess before we can see the resolution. That's Holy Week. We dwell in the conflict between human ways and God's ways. We see the consequences not only of our sin, but of our attempts to solve it. In the end, we will see the triumph of God's ways, resurrection. But this week, we sit in the mess. In our Friday study group on the wisdom of Jesus, we look this week at a prayer practice known as welcoming prayer. It's a practice for the midst of life during times of upset, where you're experiencing a distressing emotional or physical situation. And it's a 3-step prayer practice. First, you consciously acknowledge the sensations that you're feeling. Are you tense? Is your heart rate up? Have you got a churning stomach? Are you angry? Are you fearful? And then you sit in the darkness, in all the mess, with your feelings, not the situation, the feelings, welcoming them and having compassion on yourself. You welcome the anger or the fear, and you don't try to talk yourself out of it or wonder why you're feeling that way. You simply acknowledge that you are feeling that way and welcome it. And then finally, you let go of the emotion, temporarily, the anger, the fear. And through using this style of prayer, acknowledging the emotions, welcoming the feelings, and letting them go, we become more ready to deal with the outer situation. Dealing with conflict is hard. It's hard enough within our own families, and then within our church community, but it gets progressively harder with our wider community and our country and the world. Sometimes we forget our common humanity, that others have the same feelings that we have. We're not all that different. We all want to be loved and forgiven. We all want peace. And as we've been talking about for the last 5 weeks, the whole world is waiting for justice to roll down. God's call is for us and everyone around the world. We are one. And so we wait together with longing for that day to come, acknowledging the mess and the emotions that we are feeling, yet trusting that resurrection and new life is coming, even when we cannot yet see it. There are many who are sitting in the mess, waiting for justice to roll down. Bishop Karen Onavito, who until July was a United Methodist pastor in San Francisco, is now a bishop in the Denver area, the Mountain Sky area. She was also one of my seminary professors. Bishop Karen is an openly married lesbian woman, which goes against the United Methodist Book of Discipline. She was elected this summer by the Western jurisdiction, not because of her orientation, but because of her faithful passion and the gifts that she would bring to the Episcopalian office. She's a gifted speaker and leader. Those who interpret the Bible differently are upset. And Bishop Karen goes on trial on April the 25th, church trial. And this week, in the middle of the mess, she recorded this message, urging United Methodists in her area to participate in a prayer vigil.
I love being your bishop. I have loved meeting you in your places of worship and beginning to build relationship together as we work towards beloved community in the Mountain Sky area. As many of you know, when I was elected in July, immediately a question of law was raised by the South Central jurisdiction questioning the legality of my election to the episcopacy. The Judicial Council will be meeting in Newark, New Jersey on April 25th at 9 a.m. to hear arguments about my election, and then we'll enter into a time of deliberation. We should be hearing their results April 28th or April 29th. I don't know about you, but I find myself holding my breath in this time of uncertainty. But this is what I've discovered when we hold our breath. This is what happens, watch. Nothing happens. And in fact, if we hold our breath long enough, we will die. As disciples of Jesus Christ, we are never called to hold our breath. We are never called to do nothing, and we are never called to welcome death. The Hebrew word for breath or Holy Spirit are the same, ruach. You and I, in this time of holy waiting, should be breathing even more deeply, surrounding ourselves with ruach, with spirit, and doing what we are called to do as disciples. Jesus summed up all the law in these two things: love God and love one another. We as United Methodists give flesh to that by making disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. So in this time of holy waiting, may we continue to build our relationships as we seek to extend God's love, God's compassion, and God's grace in the world in ways that people want to become a part of. I also want to invite you to one other thing. The ministry teams of the Mountain Sky area are organizing a prayer vigil beginning on April 23rd, extending during that time of the Judicial Council meeting and the deliberations, and then concluding on April 30th. I invite you to take your turn, that we might hold one another and hold the Judicial Council members in our prayers. One of the guiding scriptures of my life is Romans 8:28. In all things, God works for good for those who love God. You know, we don't know what's going to happen on April 28th or 29th. But then again, we don't know what's going to happen in the next hour, in the next week, in the next 2 weeks. What we know is God is working God's purpose out. So let us rest in the assurance that God is in this and God is with us. Thank you. Thank you for all we've shared so far. And I say yes to all that's yet to be. May God bless you, and in all things may we stay loving.
Our California, Nevada annual conference area has also been invited to pray. We've been invited to pray for the churches in the Mountain Sky area. This is a difficult time for them. And they have some mixed feelings too, some of them. So let's keep them in our prayers. Jesus modeled for us the non-violent way to be in right relationship with our neighbours. And that means building those relationships by moving outside of our comfort zones, reaching across the aisles, the walls, the boundaries, to create solidarity in the mess of our divided world. We need compassion, empathy, listening, education, and a desire to be one. If you're following our Lent devotional yesterday, you will have read quickly through the whole Passion story. And as you read N.T. Wright's final a brief observation, it went like this. It is through Jesus' crucifixion, Matthew insists, that he becomes what he was born to be, the Saviour. And this is how he does it. By extending his arms on the cross, enfolding us in that God with us embrace, and bringing us with him through death into a whole new life. As we heard in the lyrics of our special music today, the day is coming, the Lord will move, and with the hand of justice and the heart of love. We will see the life that Isaiah talked about, where the wilderness will rejoice and blossom like the crocus. And while we hold on to that hope, God has a part for us to play too. Our help is needed. We are God's hands and feet. May the waters of justice flow and roll through us all. Thanks be to God. Amen.